News coming out of the Middle East, the United States and the United Kingdom striking Houthi rebels in response to the attacks on shipping vessels in the Red Sea. U.S. Air Force's Mideast Command saying they struck more than 60 targets at 16 sites in Yemen, which includes launching systems, munitions depots, and air defense radar systems. The Houthis saying strikes killed at least 5 people.
Robert Wilkie is the former Undersecretary of Defense in the Trump administration, and Fred Fleitz joining us, a former member of the Trump National Security Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. There's a lot to dive into and a lot of questions here. And I'll start with Secretary Wilkie, if I can, with you. Can you talk about what happened overnight here, this U.S.-led coalition, this strike? Why now? What does this mean moving forward?
Well, you know, if this had been President Trump, it would have been a massive strike on Houthi capabilities. The consternation that I have is that both London and Washington keep talking about proportionate responses. That doesn't count when American troops and American assets are hit. What they did was they hit command and control, intelligence nodes, and missile launch sites. Again, I'll say at a time when they were guaranteed to have as few actual casualties as possible. That seems to be the MO here of the Biden administration. But and Fred can speak to this in greater depth. But what we're seeing, though, in this individual incident is the continued failure of Biden's Iranian policy. He lifted all the sanctions the Trump administration had, particularly on oil revenues. They were making less than $5 billion a year under Trump. They're now up in the 60s and 70 billions, plus the transfer of money to the Iranians. They're the ones behind this. The Houthis are their outlier, their expeditionary force. The main villain here is Iran, and this administration continues to coddle the Ayatollahs.
Congress has mixed reaction. Really depends who you ask. We pulled 2 responses. The House Speaker Mike Johnson saying that the action by U.S. and British forces was long overdue. He hopes these operations indicate a true shift in the Biden administration's approach to Iran and its proxies that are engaging in such evil and wreaking such havoc. But Democrats not too happy about this one, at least a handful, including California Congressman Ro Khanna saying the president needs to come to Congress before launching a strike against the Houthis in Yemen and involving us in another Middle East conference. That is Article 1 of the Constitution. I will stand up for that regardless of whether a Democrat or Republican is in the White House. So, Fred, what does this reaction from Congress tell you? How might this complicate the situation for President Biden?
Well, I want to first add that I think that this was a long overdue, but probably an appropriate, robust attack on the Houthis' missile and drone capability. But I agree with Secretary Wilkie that this would not have happened if Donald Trump was president. This was a failure of deterrence, a failure of American leadership. I don't think the Houthis would have tried any of these attacks if Trump was president. Trump would have responded much more aggressively. I don't think congressional approval was needed for this attack because it was self-defense. Congress was notified. There are certain people on the right and left who think that Congress has to authorize attacks like this. I don't agree, but I will tell you that if an attack against Iran is planned, and I can't imagine Biden doing that, we have to have a vote by Congress. That would be a very serious matter. And I know there's people like Senator Graham who want us to attack Iran. My friend John Bolton wants us to attack Iran, but let's not do that unless we have congressional buy-off.
Let me ask really quickly, if I can, Secretary, going back to you. The Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, still in the hospital. Obviously, there's a cloud looming around that in terms of secrecy behind it. We now know that he's hospitalized within this moment. What does that mean in terms of response and leadership within the Pentagon in this moment?
Well, it depends on the model of leadership that you use. Under the Trump model, the Secretary of Defense was the key player. Under the Biden model, the White House staff actually runs the show, and the cabinet secretaries are really functionaries. So in that regard, it doesn't mean very much. In a greater context, though, it removes one of the 2 command authorities and the redundancy in the system when it comes to greater strategic threats that exist every day to the United States. But it's more of a comment on the mess that is Biden foreign policy.